to set up from last week. They were just finished filming Hard Day's Night and most of the album, and they needed to take a month off because they were really burnt out at that time. So they basically took the month of May off, more or less, and Brian Epstein tried to get them all holidays in complete privacy and in complete secret. And so he had someone like book their flights without calling anyone on the phone and using fake names, aliases for everyone, and etc. If you want to hear more details about the trip in general, we talk about that in the previous episode. While we talked about John and George in Tahiti, so while John and George were in Tahiti, Paul and Ringo and their respective girlfriends, I guess at this time, went to the Virgin Islands. So we're going to pick up the story from there. They went from London to Paris to Lisbon, and apparently they spent a night in a hotel there, Ritz Hotel. And at the hotel, Paul and Ringo went with disguises on, and the receptionist looks at their passports and says, "These aren't you." You know, just imagine Hard Day's Night, mustache, wigs, whatever. This is not you. Instead of being an issue with the disguises, it turns out that there was a mix-up of the passports. They had John and George's. So somehow they got in and had the passports switched by flying them to Lisbon and Honolulu, respectively. So someone literally had to get on a plane and physically take the passports to Honolulu, where the other two were, and the others brought it back. Anyway, everything finally got sorted out, and I'm sure them being the Beatles was probably made it a little bit easier. But then after that, off to Puerto Rico, finally arriving at St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. They chartered a boat while they were there, similar to John and George, and they had a captain aboard that was named Bulliard and his wife Peggy, and a deckhand who Ringo calls College Boy. I don't know what that's referring to. And apparently the boat was called the Happy Days.
Is this before the television show?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes. One story, Paul took a dinghy out one day to go spearfishing. He was below the water swimming, and I don't know exactly spearfishing, what that entails. I know like what a Hawaiian sling is, and I've seen people use that. I don't know if that's what he was doing or if he was literally just stabbing fish underwater. But in any case, he saw some barracudas underneath the water. He says he tried to make them go away, but they wouldn't. And I'm assuming he just fled the second he saw him. I don't know why anyone would be like, "Oh, let's just try to ward off those barracudas." I'd be like, "Nope, thank you."
Yeah, water bad.
In any case, he swam back onto the dinghy, having caught nothing.
Okay.
After that, Paul was walking on the beach barefoot, and Ringo mentions that there was these like cactus things all over the place. So naturally, he got all those spikes stuck in his feet. And Ringo called him Limpy all week, which, all things considered, is not the greatest nickname, but fair enough. Jane couldn't go out in the sun because she was redheaded, pale. Just stepping out in the sun might scorch you. I wonder why the Virgin Islands was decided upon, but anyway. And on top of this, Paul got sunburned and stayed up all night moaning and crying about it, apparently. From like Ringo's words, he said it was absolutely miserable just listening to Paul scream all night. So one evening, they went ashore at Little Dick's Bay in Virgin Gorda and listened to a calypso band all night and danced. These are just all little pieces I'm getting from the Beatles book, so maybe they're not even true. For the trip, Paul decided to buy a cheap acoustic guitar. He tried to get away from everyone and write, so he started in the cabins. But he was down in the cabins. The gas smell was so strong that he was getting lightheaded, he said, and he had to go up and write it on the deck to finish it. We have another quote, which seems to be a little bit more accurate. However agreeable the boat might have been, I liked to go down to my cabin, somewhere where no one could get to me. I could lock the world out, and I'd sit there and strum away for a little while and see if anything came. By this stage, I had a really good Epiphone guitar. I started with an A minor chord. Aha, that's right. A minor to E minor. Aha, that's right too. Which gave me a sort of folksy, whimsical world. And then in the middle, on Me, I'm Just the Lucky Kind. It goes to major and gets hopeful. Again, accurate. The thing I always loved and still love about writing a song is that at the end of 2 or 3 hours, I have a newborn baby to show everyone. I want to show it to the world, and the world at that moment was the people on the boat. I had to remember it, of course, because I didn't write it down. I didn't write music down because I couldn't. It was all in the head. I like that description better because that seems more accurate to me.
Yeah, totally. This song is overwhelmingly A minor. Mm-hmm. So much of the song is A minor. So the other quote where he talks only about the C to F to B flat, that is an interesting part of the song.
Absolutely.
Of like the verse of the song.
All right. So I do have another quote from Paul, which is probably the wildest quote from Paul I've ever read.
What? Hang on a sec. Please, just if
wait,
you could.
Just hold on. Play the clip.
I'm going to
just find it.
Oh,
that's a hot take. Yeah. So there's one other quote where he says that they stumbled into a random home on a random street and they found a piano and wrote the song. That was pretty wild. But this is probably overtakes it to me. There was something about the atmosphere there that made me get quite keen on writing new songs in the evenings. I did a couple while I was there, which we recorded when I got back. The Things We Said Today and Always and Only. I've never heard about that song. I don't know Always and Only. And I looked it up. I can't find any reference to a song called Always and Only, which he says that they recorded.
Huh.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I can see how that would be very wild to you because the fact that Paul is openly talking about a song that you yourself have not been able to find any evidence of, that's wild.
Where is that song? What is it? And if you just take the words Always and Only, like it's not another name for what you're doing or another song that he would have written on the next album. It's And I Love Her, Always and Only, maybe. I don't know. That's wild. I love it.
Yeah, and he's like looking back, we as songwriters, we have these like, periods where we're really prolific. And then in those like prolific times where the songs are just pouring out of us, there might be like one or two that like the cream rises to the crop. And the fact that he's talking about a prolific songwriting session and 2 songs in particular would make you think that this was a good song. This was like, there was something special about this one too.
Right. And this is again in the Beatles book, like the fan magazine from that time. And he said right there, he's like, we recorded when we got back, the things we said today and always and only. Now I'm not going to hold him to saying when we recorded when we got back, because I'm certain that they didn't record a song called Always and Only. That would have been documented somewhere. But that's just wild. Anyway, so if anyone knows anything about that song or has heard of it or has another reference to it outside of that Beatles fan journal or whatever, please send it to me.
Always.
All right, and then after the vacation, Paul gave the guitar to Peggy, the captain's wife. I wonder if she still held on to that and like had Paul's guitar that he wrote Things We Said Today on. That's a memento.
Yeah. Oh, keep that in the family. Someone's going to college.
Right. Someone from the Daily Express found out that they were there. So we had talked about how John and George went relatively unscathed in terms of people finding their location. Certainly the press didn't know they were there. So they succeeded, but not so much Paul and Ringo. So wherever they went, a bunch of little boats traveled around them. Kind of like, a shark and like a school of fish hanging off of it. One guy said that they had to sit there until they got a photo. So Paul posed for it so they would go away. And then they traveled back to London, May 27th. So for them, 25-day vacation in the Virgin Islands. Not too shabs.
He's just testing some stuff out, Rob.
Yeah.
I think it's working.